Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. This one is number 7. We're going to be working on some office ceiling tiles. Typical tiles that you'd see in an office setting. Here are some references that I have. So we're going to be making like a vent like this. We're going to be having like a light panel. Uh, Whatever this is. Maybe like a smoke detector, maybe. I don't know. But it'll give us some stuff to put up there. There's a lot of detail here, a lot of subtle and small details. So let's hop right into it. Let me move this back. All right. So you can see here I already started setting up some stuff. Um, we'll be starting with the height as usual. So I just have a levels here, default levels, hooked up to an ambient occlusion. The height depth for this guy is set to 0.025. We're not going to have many deep ambient occlusion. Metallics at the bottom with a uniform color set to 0 and grayscale just because it's at the bottom because we're not going to have anything metal on this one. Our height is black because we don't have anything plugged in. For the normal, we're going to be doing an intensity of 10 just to really make our details pop. Roughness, we just have a base grayscale of 0.75 for the uniform just so that we can have an easier time looking at our progress instead of having something super glossy. Emissive we'll do when we work on color, so don't worry about that guy just yet. And then we have our base color up here with a 0.5 value on the gray. All right, so we're going to start with a shape. I already have this guy all the way over here, and I'm just going to plug him in. This is a default shape. Nothing's changed. We're using it as like the base of the tiles. Okay, so first thing I want to do after that is we're going to lower it a little bit because we're going to have the what's it called? Actually, I'm just going to leave this here so I can just tap to it. Right now we're working on this, the base, and then we're going to be adding these grid thing braces after. So we're lowering it to make room for that later. Okay, so let's copy this. Now, next is if we look at our reference here, if you stare at this and you look closely, you can see that these squares, I guess, are kind of they're like bending inward here, almost like they're kind of like sagging, I guess. Oh, I guess because like the reinforcement on this guy's is like on the corners. So the middle here is like sagging because it wants to like come down, obviously. So it seems like there's like a bit of a curve going here towards the center. It's very, very subtle, but it's there. So that's what we're going to be doing next. So I'm just going to copy these guys. I'm just going to paste everything, and then we're going to connect it, and then I'm going to walk you guys through what's happening here. Remember, keep yourself organized early, and it won't be a headache later. All right, so we start with a tile generator here, set to 4x4, because that's how many tiles we're going to be doing, a 4x4 grid. I scaled this up to 1.24. Oh, and we're using a paraboloid for the pattern. I think that's it. I'll go through all the settings just in case I miss one. You guys can pause and look at it. I don't think this random seed matters. Yeah. Okay. Then after that, we blur it by a lot. And then we auto level it. Then that gets blended in here with an add linear dodge of 0.07. And then if you look here, you can see the bumps. And obviously because we're doing a 4x4, it's going to correspond to the tiles that we're going to be making now. Okay. Next here is a tile generator. 4x4 again. We're going to be using a square pattern. Scale of 0.95. Luminance random all the way up to 1. And then blend mode is set to add, which I think is the default, but just to double check. Then I'm going to need a scan here. Okay, so let me show you what we're doing now. So right now, we're not really making tiles. We're just making a base, a continuous base. And then, the grid is going to go on top, and that's going to make it look like they're unique or separate squares, but they're not. Now, if we look closely here, some of these guys are kind of falling through. So that's what we're doing right now. We're going to have some of these squares coming down, or they're going to be higher than the base here. So I'm using a tile generator to create the squares, because technically we don't have any squares right now. This is all a continuous, this is just like one continuous base. So by giving it a luminance random and giving it a range of grayscale here, my scan is able to select some of them. All right. Next, I need a let me just hook this up. Okay. So right now, like I said, we're scanning to get a select view. I want like 2 of them. Then here I do a very, very, very subtle, small blur. And then here I multiply it by the original scan. Because if we look here, the blur blurs in both directions, right? Because it's just blurring evenly. So it's blurring outward and it's blurring inward. Now, I just want the blur on the inward. So I'm using this original mask before the blur to multiply out the black from here and keeping the white. So so what happens afterwards is we get rid of the outside blur and keep the inside blur. So now we kind of get like a rounded edge. Because if we look here, you can see that there's like some, what do you call this? Some like edge wear. And this is not completely like a harsh fall off, right? There's a bit of a curve. All right. So now we're gonna work on that edge wear. Let me just grab these guys, paste over here. Okay, so we're gonna drag this out here, and then plug this into the top of the slope blur grayscale here. All right, so we're gonna start with the clouds, then a histogram scan. Then here we divide by 2 to increase the tiling. And then here's our slope blur. So what this is going to do is going to introduce some edge wear, some chipping. So then we're going to need another blend. And that's going to go in here. And then this is going to go on top. So what's happening here is typically I always keep my slope blur away from my, like not on my main line for most cases, because sometimes I don't want all of this. So I use this to like drive, how worn my edges are. And then I use like a simple, just a copy. And then, so if I bring this all the way up, it's giving me this result, right? So I don't want that. I want some of that. I don't want all of it. Oops, let me click here. So by using a copy blend, I'm able to go between the original and the blur version and get like a, because our wear is going all the way down to the ground, all the way down to zero for the most part. See, like this whole chunk is gone. Now I don't want it to be gone all the way. So actually, let's set this up so we can see it and our viewport. Um, so let's just finish this up. So what was this value? It was 0.31. So let's go back to that. Don't worry, I will explain all of this in just a second. I think it's just easier when we can visualize it as we go. Okay, so now let's see what we did here. So you can see that some of these squares are raised, and here's our like edge wear. So what I was talking about is, like I said, normally I have my slope blur off the main track, because if this was, let's say like over here, and then it fed right into it, it would look like, that. And see how it goes all the way down to the ground? So let me undo that. Actually, let's go over here and change our height scale. I think 2.5 works pretty well. And then let's just, I'm just going to do 6. There we go. So now we get some more definition. Actually, let's go with 8. So, okay, so I just plugged this directly in, and you can see that it goes all the way down to the ground. But by messing around with the opacity on the copy blend, we're able to raise it so that the edge wear is like up here and not all the way to the bottom. And then this multiply here is just making sure that any slope blurring, because if we look here, this is the edge of the tile, of the square, but our slope blur is going outside of it. So it's like we're generating extra square, which we don't want. So I just multiply again, similar to what I did here with the slope blur. Or not the slope blur, the normal blur. Multiply by the original to make sure that it stays within the bounds of the box. So it cleans it up basically. Okay. And I guess I could have just done, I guess I don't need this one anymore. But we'll just leave it. Alright. So here we have a levels, and it's just at the 0.75. And the reason for this levels is because I wanted to get a desired effect, but basically I don't want all of these like squares that are falling through. I don't want all of these to be the same, to be falling at the same height. So I want some to be lower and some to be, a different height variation. Okay, so now we have this. I'm going to copy paste this segment here. Okay, so right now we're working on this noisy stuff on the base, but I didn't like this look, so I went with a different look, a different noise. All right, so I'm gonna reuse this clouds one here, Let me just plug this all in, then we can go through it so much faster. I wonder if I should pause the video while I set this up, but we'll see. All right. So now if we look at our 3D view, we can see whether we have some cool, interesting noise happening here. So let's run this through real quick. So we have a grunge spots here. I increase the tiling, divide by 2, this guy here. And then I slope blur it, set to max, and like I said, I drew from this class to try and recycle. Then I scan to kind of tighten them up, because right now you can see that it's very slopey. This is the gradients. And let's say we take that off. It becomes like more curvy, so I have a scan here to tighten it up to make them a little flatter. Then I have a different noise here, grunge spots. Actually, it's the same one. But I changed the seed. Again, I double the tiling, divide by 2. Then I do a slope blur using the same clouds 1 noise. Again, recycling. Same process. Then I do a scan. Now let me press these so you guys can see it. Then I do a max lighten with 0.55 to kind of add them together. Now I wanted some of them, as you can see here, they're different values. These are grayer than these guys because I want them to be like varying heights. Then here we have a dirt 3 default scan, same process to try and tighten them up. Max lighten 0.5, again just adding another layer. Then I divide by 2 again, increase tiling, and then we need a, we'll come back to this guy in a second. And then we do a subtract of 0.005. Very, very subtle. This is what actually, gives us our pits. Okay, so we're gonna move back over here real quick. We have to create something real quick. I'm gonna copy paste all of this. I think at one point do I just do a walkthrough of the original, but I don't know. I think this helps you guys visualize step by step, or by chunk. All right, so we have a tile generator again, 4x4, keeping it in line. Just gonna go through the settings here. Nothing seems different except for the luminous random all the way up, just to get, a grayscale of cubes. Then we do an edge detect, 1 and 0 all the way down. We do a flood fill. you need a dividing line like this, or you need islands for the edge for the flood fill to detect individual islands. Otherwise, if it's all one white, it'll detect it as one island. Then I do a flood fill to random color to get a color gradient. I guess not gradient, but a range of colors, random colors. And then I use distance node to push out the pixels out, like we've done in many tutorials. And then we use the edge detect to go on the mask input. And then we change this to 5000 just to make sure that it pushes all the way out. Now that we have that, we're able to use this for our vector warp. Correct. Okay. And now I did it at the end so that I don't have to do it through each one of these. And this makes it so that the noise here doesn't run from one of these to the other. So it interrupts here, or wherever this is. Okay, so here. And this cube is smaller than the space, and that's because we need to leave room for the grid, for the railing. All right. Now we're going to add one more. If we look at our reference, we can see here there are these tiny, tiny like bubbles, kind of like small little dents here. So we're going to do that real quick. Let's keep sliding down, make sure we have room. Just going to grab all of this here. Okay. This guy is going to plug into the histogram scan. And then that's it. Okay, so what's happening here is we're adding another layer, as you can see here, of those dots I mentioned, those little bubbles. And we started with a white noise fast, then we scanned it to isolate because we don't want, that many. If I disable this, it changes everything. So I just have these isolated dots, and you can see here that there are varying heights. So some are deeper and shallower than others. Then I blur it to kind of give me that like bubbly effect. Then I auto levels to kind of bring it out more. Then I increase the tiling 4 times. And then here, I graphed this old because I don't want these bubbles to be inside of these guys. I don't want them to be inside, just on the outside. So if I were to get rid of this, now we'd have it everywhere. Now I want there to be a clear distinction between the two. So I scanned the first layer of noise. And then I get this where it's just like the max range of the of this pitting here. And then I subtract this mask from these guys. That way they're not on it. So we do a subtract here. And then we do another subtract to subtract the other guys, the tiny guys, from the rest of it. And then because we subtracted the noise after we did our tiles, our extruded tiles, then it kind of just does like a blanket subtract on everything. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, now we're going to work on creating a socket for our light, our fluorescent light. I think that's what they are. So I'm just going to copy paste this. Okay, so very simple, just create a shape here. You can see the settings there. Then I think I mess with the size here and the placement. And something to look out for while I'm showing you guys these nodes is look at the filtering here. Sometimes I change it to nearest. I guess I should for all of these really. As I've mentioned before, when you stretch things or scale things, sometimes you create, come on. You create like a blurring effect on edges. So to get rid of it, sometimes you need to do like a scan, set to 1 and 1. Or you can change this to nearest here. Now it's not perfect, because you can see that it should probably end like about here. But it goes here. So maybe a solution would be to do a scan. But that's like taking the max distance. But we'll just stick to the tutorial or to what I did before. I don't want to start changing things now. So just leave it at bilinear and we'll keep this here. I don't think it's a big deal. Alright, so let me show you guys this. I think I already did. And then here we do a subtract. And now we're created this socket, basically, where the our light is going to go. Okay. Then we are going to place the light. Okay, now that we have this like socket, we're able to use our levels to move the light up and down, basically. Now remember, I've already finished this material, and I'm copying on my other monitor. I have that finished one, that graph open. So even though like I have everything kind of lined up nicely, like the socket, then the light, and then we did the other stuff before it, 99% of the time, when it's a work in progress, I'm going back and forth and moving things around and rearranging their order and stuff. So unless you plan a material really well and you're able to like plan it out perfectly in your head before you start working, you're going to have to rearrange things. So just because I have everything lined up perfectly and flowing well doesn't mean that it's how it came out. It's many hours of back and forth rearranging. So if you're making your own stuff and you have to like rework your graph, that's completely normal. You can plan for some things, but not everything. So just keep that in mind. It's not a big deal. I know I present everything here really nicely and stuff, but it's a mess at first, and then, it's a work in progress. Alright, so our shape here are the settings, here's the transform. I don't know why I have this one, but I'm not going to question it now. And then I level it to lower it here. Okay. And then here we make the hole for the vent that we're going to be doing later. So we have a shape here, transform, another transform, and then we subtract, and then we have our socket over here. Well, let me go top down. Our socket here for the vent. All right, now we're gonna create the vent. Now, this is gonna be a big copy paste here. Otherwise, it's gonna take me forever to build it for you guys. So I'm just gonna. Oh God, it's bigger than I thought. There's a joke there. Okay. Um, okay, and it's done. So you just need to drag this in, and you're done, guys. It's that simple. All right, so let's just go through this quickly. Start with a shape. Plug that into a. Actually, let me go to this shape. Then we have another shape here with these settings. Then I do an edge detect to round out the edges. And then I multiply because sometimes you will, when you edge detect, you get extra stuff. So like for example, if I turn this down and let's say I wanted this around the corners, I use this multiply again to get rid of that because this is the original size. So let me undo that. Okay, so yeah, bring your edge roundness to 16 to get this. Then after we multiply, we do a bevel. Then that goes on the top, and then we subtract. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna hide these. If you select the node and then Shift D, you're able to turn them off and on, basically. So I can show you, as we're going through this. So that makes the first set right here. Then we create another shape. Same thing, we edge detect it here. And then we do the multiply because we actually do have some extra stuff we don't need. Then we do a transform 2D. Then we blur it. And then we get this. Then we do another shape. Another edge detect here. Same thing, we multiply it. Then we bevel it. Now don't forget, bevels have a normal format to attach to them. So if you're working in OpenGL, make sure you swap this to OpenGL. But we always work in DirectX, so just we can leave it as DirectX. But if you change this, you have to make sure all your normal formats in your entire graph are all using the same. You don't want to be using DirectX on some and OpenGL on others. You're gonna have a bad time. Yeah, your material's gonna look weird normal wise. Okay, so after we bevel, we do a subtract. And then we do a transform 2D from this guy here. Then from this guy, we do a levels. Nothing really changed. Then we blur it. Then we have a transform 2D from that same guy down here. Then we bevel it again. Then we do a levels. Then we do a subtract to get the, to go from this to this. And then this level doesn't do anything, so I don't know why it's there, but I'm gonna leave him. He's not hurting anybody. So now we should have this. Then here we have a small disk, very tiny, and we're gonna be doing that small. This guy here. So we take a disk, then we blur it, then we add linear dodge it, and there he is. Then I realized that there is there's a bit of a bevel here. So I made another shape here. I beveled it. Then I inverted it to get this. And then I subtract. So if we look over here, we go from this to this. Now, like I said, lots of changing and stuff, so I know that the grid's going to land here. So I did this way later, because if I had done this early, then I wouldn't have known, where the grid is going to land. So this is something I did later. Okay, so then you should have this, the vent that takes up the entire texture. So then I scale it down. And then I level it to lower it. And then I max lighten it to add it into place. So now we should have this. Now I am going to create a scan up here coming from this transform 2D because we're going to need this later. And it's set to 1, 1. Okay. Now this part's a little funny because I made it way more difficult than it needed to be. But sometimes when you're working on a material for many, many hours, you just get to a very lazy point and you just want to brute force what you need into the graph. So that's what happens here, but I'll walk you guys through it. Now, you can probably find an easier way to do this, but I'll show you what I did. Okay. So we start with a shape. So right now we're making the grid, as you can see here. Now, if we look, let me show you. If we look at the grid, especially here at the light, you can see that this guy going this way stops here, and then this is solid, and it covers the entire light. So it stops here, and it stops up here. So if we go back, we're going to create the grid, and you can see here that it stops here, and it stops up here, just like in the reference. So in order to get that, I had to do a lot of manual work. A little bit, it's gonna look a little suspect, but let's just get into it. So we start with a shape, then we do a tile generator 1 and 4 to get this scale of 1.5. We have a small global offset, and I think that's it. Hopefully I didn't miss anything, but make sure you look through and double check with your graph. Okay, then we have a shape. Then we do a transform 2D, filtering set to nearest. Keep an eye on that. Then we have another transform 2D here. Then we have a subtract, where I subtract this guy from this to get this, which is a very subtle version of the other one. And then we have this blend here, we just have to subtract. This goes on top here, and then this main route here goes into the middle. And then it also redirects down here into this transform 2D. Then we have this other shape here. Then we have another tile generators. I think it's the same settings, but I'll just go through them just in case. 1.5 scale, offset. Then from this shape, we go down into another transform 2D down here. And then we subtract this from the tile generator. Then we do a subtract. So then I'll run you guys through this afterwards. So let's just set it up. Then we do an add linear dodge to get this. And then this gives us the main grid. And then here we create the inner one for the light. So we start with a shape, and then we have another shape, and then we use the one shape to subtract from the other. Then we create another shape. Now this one is super tiny, it's super thin. Then we rotate it and scale it and twist it and move it. Then we blur it. And then we do a histogram scan. Then we mirror it from here to here. And then we mirror it again to get it on the bottom. And then we subtract. And then we move it into place. And then we add this. And then here's where we blur our railing to kind of give it some rounded edges. Otherwise we have this, which is not very nice. So here we give it some curve love. And then we do some level manipulation to get it where we want it. Okay, so what in the world did I just do? So like I said, here we create the grid, and originally I had a gap here and here. Let me see if I can do it. If I get rid of this. Yeah, ignore this right here, but basically this piece would go inside, and then the divider would be here, and I didn't want that. So I just created a quick, just like a random shape, and then I was able to like forcibly subtract. So here I subtract the, I create the gap. So that creates this guy here. And then I had to create another shape to subtract up to 1 pixel away so that we have the gap. And then I had to make sure I had that on both sides. Here it's not perfect. You can see that there's some gray there, but that's whatever. And then here we create the inner frame, and then we used a very thin shape to create a little like gap in between. If we look at our reference here, there's like, it's like connected here. So in order to have that effect, I created this line, and then I rotated it, and then I mirrored it, and did all of that. And I didn't subtract all the way down, otherwise we would have gotten this, which I didn't want. I just wanted to be kind of subtle. So 0.25, and then I move it into place. And then, I already explained the rest. All right, we're almost done, guys. I know some of this stuff is just kind of like, oh god, all these little like shapes and moving and this and that. I know it can get a little frustrating when following along. I don't want to spend too much time explaining like my my I don't know how to explain it. My makeshift solutions. But there's probably a way better, simpler way to make this grid, but yeah, after hours, you just want to get it over with. And you just don't care who's looking. Okay. So next here, if we look at our reference, what I was trying to do here is add these little guys. I don't know what in the world they are. They seem like some clips or something that they're used to hold it up, but for some reason it's only on one side and it's not on the other, on any of the lights. See, they're only there and there. I wanted to put them on both sides, but I decided to stick to the reference. So what we have here is a shape. Then we do a transform 2D. And we move it to the left. Then I mirror it to get 2. I think we did this in the last tutorial as well, the similar workflow here. Then I create another shape. And then I add them to create a capsule. Then I blur it. Then I multiply by the original bounds of the capsule, again, because I don't want it spilling over outside of the mask. Then here I take a lowered version of the mask, set to 0.5, and then I screen it to raise the capsule bevel so that the bevel doesn't go all the way to the ground. And we've done this in plenty of tutorials, so. And then here we scale it all the way down, 64 times. And then we also move it into place. And then we mirror it to the bottom. And then we max lighten it. And then there it is. There's the 2 little guys. Then after this, we're going to create this guy here. He must be a smoke detector or something. So I'm just gonna grab all of this. Okay. Why does it look so bad? Well, I guess we'll figure it out. Okay. Oh, I know why it looks so bad. I forgot a levels here. So in order to make room for the smoke detector, we need to lower everything. Because we're running out of room in our 0 to 1 range. So I have this levels here. So you can see if I turn this off, there's not much room for this guy. Because this is the very tip top is the maximum. So we create this levels here to 0.7 to lower everything. See how everything's so bright? We lower it and then we add this on top. The smoke detector. That's why it was looking weird. Okay. So we start with the shape, paraboloid. We 2D transform it. We turn it small and we move it into place. Then we create another shape here, a disk, 0.015. Again, we scale it and move it into place. So you can just do one of these and then copy and paste them because these are all going to be the same, these three. Then here we are making this inner ring. So we create a shape, a disk. Then we create another disk, a smaller disk, and then we use the smaller disk to subtract from the bigger disk to create a ring. And then we have the same transform 2D here. And then here we subtract this small disk from the bigger one to create the little hole in the center. And then this opacity is what's deciding how deep the cut is, or the hole. And then here we subtract the ring. And we're actually going to use this guy later in the roughness and base color. So after we have this, we use the levels to play around with the shape of the smoke detector. And then we scan it to create a mask of the maximum bounds of the smoke detector. Then we lower it, then we screen it because we're doing the same thing again, where we want to create a blur, or not a blur, a rounded edge, but then we wanted to do a straight fall off. So same thing we've been doing with the cap, with the little capsule thing just now. And then we max light it into place. Just make sure I show you guys these things here. And then we're just going to drag out of this guy because we're going to need him later. Just going to leave him there. Alright, okay. We got one last thing, guys, and we're done with the height. So let's leave it. Now this part we haven't done before, so this is kind of cool. I made this material a long time ago, and like about a year ago, year and a half ago, and I didn't finish it. Then I came back and made it 10 times better. Okay, so we're going to what we're doing now is we're doing the this pattern that is found on the fluorescent light. Okay, so we're actually not going to make the patterns on the fluorescent light. We're not going to make it part of the height because the details are so small that you would need a very high like vertice count to get to make use of that detail. So we're just going to have that detail on the normal, only on the normal channel. So that's something I don't think we've done in any tutorial yet. So I'll show you guys how this works here. Now, I don't have much experience with it, so this is just how I did it, but it worked perfectly, so probably the way you do this. Okay, so first let's make the pattern. So we have a tile generator, and we're using the pattern pyramid. And we're changing the X and the Y amount to 250. And then we're adding an offset of 0.5, because if we look at, I didn't realize this till later. Actually, I think there's a better one here. Yeah, you can see that they offset every other row. So we're offsetting, and I think that's it. Yep, and then everything else stays the same. Then here, I move it a little bit because I wanted it to kind of match up with like I wanted the square to be at like the corner. You don't really need to, it can just land wherever, but it was really bothering me, so I did that. Then we did a range. Actually, why did I do this? I guess I didn't want the because if we look here, I didn't want them to be very deep. So I did a range here to lower the pyramid, because if we look at the because this is what we're using to make the pattern in the generator. So we wanted to lower, this point. Which I could have just done a levels and lowered the whites, but I'm not gonna start questioning my old self now. So we did a range here, very subtle range, and then we drove the end into a normal, because we're going to be blending, we're just working with normals right now at this point. Again, set the DirectX, so that's what I'm working with, and then we have a very low intensity. Now, in order to add this into the normal, there is a specific blend node you have to use, and it's called normal blend. Now we're going to plug this guy on top, and then I'm actually going to unplug the normal, and I am going to move this over here. And I'm actually going to lower these guys to one set. And then this normal is going to plug into the middle, and then we're going to plug this blend into here. Now we need to plug something in here, and that's going to be the main after everything that's been done. Make sure it's after everything. So then this is what would have been plugged into here. But we need to take a small detour, because now we're going to be blending this into our main thing. But in order for this to work, we need a mask. Otherwise, it's just going to put the pattern on everything. So we need a mask that is the inside of the light. So it should stop about here, right? Because this is the curve of the frame. So it needs to be a shape of this size, and of course we have that. So we are going to go back, and let me find out where it is. We're going to go all the way back over here, and we're going to create another transform 2D with these values. And then we are going to do this, and we're going to make it low so that we go around all of this stuff. And then this is going to go into the mask. And see, this thing is perfectly the size of the inside. So now if we look here, we have our pattern, our pyramid pattern for the light. And let me just turn this down a little bit so we can see it better. There we go. And if you want to make it stronger and stuff, you can go to here and then mess with the intensity. Obviously, I want it to be subtle. because it's not supposed to be super strong. Okay, I think that concludes the end of height and normal, I guess, since there was a small detour. If you guys have any questions, if I skipped anything or need me to clarify anything, let me know in the comments and I will do so. Alright guys, I'll see you guys on the base color.